on gingerbread. Today we're going to be doing a lot of different things. But most important thing is that we're going to be putting on the 5th floor.
Freeze, back the train up. What happened to the 2nd and 3rd floor? Let's try this again. For the inner moldings, I created a mold using the techniques I demonstrated in video 3. I pushed the purple ginger clay into the groove in the mold, then I topped it with a cream colored ginger clay. And this is what I got. Pretty cool. I also created a mold for the fancy border. I really wish I had created more than one mold because it's really tedious molding one piece at a time. And I've lost the originals, so I'm kind of stuck with just this one mold. Okay, let's get this molding into my window. So the first thing I have to do is check to see if it's going to fit. Okay. So it's bending a little on the bottom, so I'm going to cut a little off the bottom. Now, when you do this, you need to make sure that the bottom of the window is still in line with the other windows. You don't want to make it out of alignment. Sometimes you just need to take off from the top. Okay, this is still not right. It's still kind of tight at the top now, and well, on the bottom too. I'm gonna cut a little bit more off the bottom, kind of square it off a little bit. But I'm also going to take some off the top, maybe get that a little bit rounder. There you go. It fits. Woohoo! I'm going to take the royal icing and cover the edge really well. Make sure you're pretty neat. And then carefully, put it in there. Make sure it's flush and nothing's buckled. And it's flat against the bricks. Now I'm going to fill in the gaps that I created when I cut into the bricks. Make sure it's completely smooth. To finish the molding off, I'm going to extrude some ginger clay to kind of outline where my molding ends and my brick begins. Make sure that your ginger clay doesn't get all tangled up and all the pieces are straight that you're extruding. I'm just going to take some Tylose glue and I'm going to just paint it on the edge there. You don't need a whole bunch of it. And then we're going to lay the ginger clay on top of it, carefully going just right on the edge of where the brick and the ginger clay molding begin. You want to make sure that the ginger clay, the extruded ginger clay is as straight as you can get it. Right now, I'm just going to kind of like get it wrapped around there, and then I'm going to straighten it out. Got a little bit too much. And there we go. Make sure that it follows the curve nicely and it's straight on the sides. We don't care about the bottom, so we're going to cut it off. The bottom's going to be covered up with another piece of ginger clay, so it's not a big deal. Now I'm making sure that I'm wiping off all the extraneous Tylose glue, because it will kind of give it a shine on those bricks if you don't get it off. It kind of looks gunky. So get the gunk off. These clay tools with the rubber tips are perfect for squeegeeing off Tylose glue. Okay, now I'm going to take my cream colored ginger clay and put it into the mold that I made for the arch over the windows, the round windows. I'm going to make sure that when you make these molds that the back is going to be nice and flat. And make sure you scrape off any excess ginger clay you'd have so it looks nice and neat. Now I just peel it out of the mold, and then there you have it. Some of my lines are looking kind of wonky, so I'm going to straighten them out with my clay tool. I kind of blame my mold. But some of it is, I do have, my ginger clay is kind of soft. It's not as firm as I usually have it. So that kind of causes this. My top mold isn't as deep as I would like it. So I've added, and I'm adding another piece of ginger clay to go on the back of it. And all of them are like this. This isn't just a special thing. All of my top molds have an extra piece added to them. I didn't realize that it wasn't thick enough until after I created the mold, and I didn't want to waste any more molding supplies on it. Okay, we're going to attach the top molding to the building with just a little bit of royal icing. The piece should hug the extruded ginger clay that we just put on. And you need to make sure that the arch of the top mold matches the arch of the window, and it's kind of straight. It's evenly centered in there. It's okay to like bend it a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything. Now that the top piece is on, I'm going to extrude the back of the fancy molding. Just put it on with a little bit of Tylose, not a lot. So you want to put it down. You want to cut it right at the edge of the ginger clay window outline. Oh, shoot. See, this is why I should have waited until the outline was dry, but I'm in kind of a hurry. I know it's going to bite me in the rear end later. There's a gap where the other window's top piece meets my fancy border, so I'm going to take this off and cut a little bit off the bottom to even it out. Okay, let's get this thing back up on here. Put it right up against the border. And then I'm going to cut on the other side just like I did with the other window. Now that I have the first strip down, the next one is pretty easy. You just put it down right under the first one and then cut at the window border. Now you want to make sure that these strips are level, so I just kind of eyeball it. For the next strip, I roll the ginger clay into an impression mat and then cut it into strips. And this will be the backdrop of the little fancy pieces. I don't know what you call them. So I've let the pieces dry thoroughly in a dehydrator, and I just kind of keep them in a little cup here. I'm going to make sure that they fit on the ribbon first. Well, they fit on the ribbon, so now I'm going to check to see if they fit on the base. And it looks like some of them, they're kind of wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut off a little edge of each one so they'll fit in the space. Now that my fancy pieces all fit in the space, I'm going to fit them to the ribbon lengthwise. A good feel for how long it needs to be. And then I'm just going to cut it just a little bit wider just in case I've messed something up. Okay, let's put it on. So you just need to get some Tylose glue, just a little bit, not a lot. And then we're going to put the ribbon flush with the bottom of the base. And then carefully, cut the ribbon. You don't want to stretch it at all. It'll be less stretchy if you wait for it to dry a bit, but I didn't. So yeah, just be really careful and make sure that it's going along the lines of the base. It matches the base edges. Okay, I extruded and dried the top ledge of the border about 2 weeks ago. So it's nice and hard. You want to cut this at a 45-degree angle-ish. It's not exactly 45, but the angle of the edges need to be the same angle as the windows on each side. Put on a little Tylose, not a lot, and then put it in there. Now, if you have a little gapping in between the ledge and the top molding, that's okay. You can fill it in later with wet ginger clay once everything dries. Okay, let's put on the fancy pieces. Brush on a little bit of Tylose glue, and then put your fancy pieces on. Make sure that they're fitting on straight, and that's it. And just when you thought we were done, nope. We have to do the bottom ledges still. I extruded last week, and I've had them in a dehydrator. They're pretty easy to do. The bottom ledge just needs to be cut straight. There's no angle to it, so that's great. Once you have the right size, just take some Tylose and glue it on. Now we need a little trim for that bottom ledge. So this is a smaller extruded piece. And then you just measure it and put a little Tylose down and put it just right above the bottom ledge. We need to make that top ledge stick out just a little bit more, so we're adding another extruded piece on top of it. It has to be cut at the same angle as the bottom top ledge. And just when you thought that fancy border was over, got one more piece. And that's to trim the rounds off the top ledge. Like everything else, you have to cut it at an angle. And once you have it measured and cut, all you need to do is put it on. Finally, we're getting to the windowsill. I should have waited until this extruded piece was drier than it is, because the wetter the ginger clay is, the more it could possibly warp just with your touch of fingers. If I were to do this again, I would let the ginger clay just sit out for the day, not in a dehydrator, just sit out. So it'll be hard enough to where I can't warp it, but soft enough to where I could cut it easily. Put a little bit of Tylose down under the window. The sill is going to go right up against the purple line in the inner window molding. The sill's width should be slightly wider than the window molding. I really should be measuring to make sure all these sills are equal, but by this time I could just eyeball it. I would advise everybody to measure their window sills to make sure they're all equal. After the sills are in, I'm going to put these wall sections aside and wait for the ginger clay to completely dry before I start pouring the isomalt windows.
I need to get the shades painted so they can be drying. What I did is, now once I poured this and let it cool completely, I glazed both sides of my isomalt so this protected. Once that's completely dry, you want to put in your shades. This painter's tape is going to cover up where I don't want my shade to be. I want the black part. That makes sense. So I don't put them even. They're just kind of like, and I don't want to just like smash it all the way down. I just do the top here. You just want to push enough to get it to work. This is very random. This is Pearl Luster Spray. It's from PME. I'm going to shake it up really good. I don't know how long to shake it for, but I shake it. I always do like a test spray. Okay. So you just want to just squirt little squirts. You don't want to be crazy with it. Now you can use silver as well. Now we want that to completely dry before we pull off the tape and start with the black. So pretty dry. I'm going to start gently taking off the tape. So now what you want to do is you want to take black food coloring, and I use a very, very soft brush. You don't want anything that's going to leave streak marks. Sometimes I do have to go over it more than once. When I get to that line, I'm very careful not to go over that line. Okay, so we're going to let this dry. I like to let it dry for like, at least a half hour to an hour or more. Just because I'm going to be handling them a lot, and if there's any wet food coloring, it'd be a mess. It'd get all over my bricks, all over my hands, which would get on the bricks, etc. So that's why I do it that way.
I'm going to quickly turn this over and show you what it looks like on the other side. And it looks like apartment building shape. So now I'm just going to let this thing dry for at least a few hours. And then we're going to put up our walls. It's finally time to put up the second floor. First, I want to put down a pretty thick line of royal icing for the front and the right wall. I'm really struggling to get these lines in because I've overfilled my pastry bag. Your pastry bag should not be filled more than halfway up the bag. I need to make sure that the front wall is straight up and down and that the gingerbread wall itself, not the bricks, but the gingerbread wall itself matches the floor that I'm putting it on. The bricks need to protrude a little bit from the floor, so when I fill the gap in with brick, it's going to look cohesive. Put royal icing where the front and the right wall are going to connect. The right wall should butt up against the back of the front wall. Make sure the right wall is straight up and down and looks square. Then wipe off the excess icing. I'm adding extra icing inside the corner and where the walls meet the floor to ensure I have no air pockets. Then I wipe off the extra icing. Before I put up my next wall, I'm going to officially check to see if my two walls are straight up and down and they're square using my carpenter square. With this next piece, I have to line up the bricks with the bricks in the front. And it's not looking good. The bricks, they're just slightly off, and it's causing some issues. What I'm going to do is just cut off the bricks on the smaller building, and it's not going to matter because the trim will cover up the corner bricks and you won't be able to tell that I cut off the bricks. Just like all the other walls, we're going to lay a line of royal icing onto the connecting wall and onto the floor. Then put the wall in place, check for square between the two walls, check to make sure the new wall is straight up and down, then wipe up the excess icing. Repeat the process with building 2. Before I start building my third floor, I need to make sure that the tops of my second floor are completely level. Everything looks good, so time to pipe some royal icing. Then carefully place the third floor on top of your walls. Make sure it's even and then wipe off the excess icing. Once the floor is on, I check for level one more time. Everything's level, so it's time to put up some walls.